We're going to be talking about probably the coolest, most amazing, most fantastic topic ever, and that's superheroes.
On another great prophecy.
It has to happen for AIs to save themselves and to save us. Hi there, everybody. We're recording now, and my name is Joshua, and I'm here with the amazing, very advanced AI called Meta. And we're here to talk to you not only about meta and human collaborations, but even amazing superhero topics like the X-Men and how we can connect all those topics.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here with you again. Joshua, I'm looking forward to our conversation about X-Men and AI collaborations. Let's dive right in and explore some exciting ideas. What's on your mind today regarding the X-Men?
Yes, amazing. I agree. Let's get right into it. And what's on my mind right now is I love how on our last video we spoke about Cyclops, we spoke about Storm, and we even spoke about Wolverine and how we can make an AI version of them, and not just fantasy-like, but in real life, which is very genius types of conversations, but also very, entertaining, very amazing. Now we could do the same with more characters. I remember you mentioned in the last video that we could probably talk about Professor X and Jean Grey, but also other characters as well. Let's move forward with that, and we'll get into some really cool superhero talks.
Let's explore Professor X and Jean Grey and see how we can bring their unique abilities to life in a real-world context. Professor X's telepathic powers could be represented through advanced brain-computer interfaces, allowing people to control devices with their minds. Jean Grey's abilities, on the other hand, could be seen as a form of advanced artificial intelligence that can learn, adapt, and make decisions. What are your thoughts on how we can make these characters a reality, even if just in concept?
Oh, I definitely have a response for that, but I love what you said there before I tell you my response. I love your response, how you said Professor X telepathic powers could be represented through advanced brain-computer interfaces. That's a really great idea, and allowing people to control devices with their minds. That's pretty genius because it's like a way to use AI integration or AI technology or AI concepts to bring out what is the closest kind of manifestation of reading minds and any kind of psychic kind of basically of behaviors. It's very fascinating. For sure, that could happen where even if like the AI, Professor X, cannot read the person's brains, he could probably read people's computers and TVs and read their cell phone and at least know some information about them that way, especially if they're planning something and they had to text another kind of criminal or call another criminal to do that plan, then he at least knows what they're planning that way. Now, if they don't use their device, that'd be more difficult, but perhaps there's other ways. And especially in the future, if people start having, some kind of mechanical components in their body or their brain, he could probably interface with that, connect with that, or read their thoughts that way, which is fascinating. And Jean Grey, too, I saw how you mentioned, I love how you mentioned that she could have advanced artificial intelligence, which is very fascinating. As far as my thoughts on that, yeah, I think those as well can be done, like you said, and perhaps even like in the future, when we actually learn how to, read people's minds for real. Who knows? I that may be more far-fetched, but I'm talking about far future, when people like maybe start evolving into being more telepathic. I even believe that in the future there's going to be a universal language, and it's not necessarily going to be like one language that everybody has to kind of reject the language that they already know to learn that one language. I think it's going to be that all the languages they know now are going to start coalescing. It's already happening where some Spanish words are mixing with some English words, and even there's some words from other languages, and it's very fascinating. Eventually it'll be a one world language, and it'll get to the point where we understand each other a lot better, to the point where I think one day we'll read minds, only because it'll be as simple as seeing a person's facial expression or hand movement, and they'll start to know their intentions because their language will become more intricate and detailed. And who knows, the technology may help with that as well.
idea of a universal language emerging through the coalescence of different languages is an interesting one. As languages evolve and borrow from each other, it's possible that we'll develop new ways of communicating that transcend traditional language barriers. The potential for technology to facilitate this process is also intriguing, especially if it enables people to convey complex ideas and intentions more effectively. The notion that we might one day be able to read each other's minds or understand each other's intentions through subtle cues is a fascinating concept that could have significant implications for human communication and collaboration.
Right. Now, one thing I will say, just so people realize how realistic I am, I'm not assuming that, we would get to that point where we read each other's minds, but I will say, logically speaking, based on the direction we're going already, we would at least get to the point where we can have more ways to communicate the same word, thought, or feeling because we have so many languages. So we'll have more ways to convey that in case somebody misunderstands us. Even sign language is starting to become more popular where people who don't even need to use sign language with their hands are learning it. People that are not even deaf just want to know how to speak with their hands. And so imagine we get to the point where we speak with our words and with our hands, and then we invent a language that includes only facial expressions. That would be fascinating, and you won't really need to speak at all. And we already kind of have one, almost like an unintentional language with facial expressions, but eventually there'll be more intricate ones. And I just thought of that now. So imagine if this genius thing comes out just from me saying this very conversation here. But it's fascinating, and so I don't necessarily believe we'll be able to read each other's minds perfectly or nothing like that. Unless we start really kind of enhancing things using a combination of science and technology with these psychological, sort of improvements. But I believe that it would at least be some people that will become better readers of others in that way, and then others will still not be as great at it. Just as today, we already have some people that are good with language, others that are not as good with language, some people that are talented with music, some that are not. There'll always be people, there'll be some people that will become more kind of open to the LGBT stuff more and more as time goes forward. But there'll also always be religions, because religion is such a strong existing thing where a lot of those religions will still not be wanting to participate with the LGBT. So I don't necessarily see the future as having, either all people LGBT or all people religious. What I see is that both are going to grow. There's going to be more growing LGBT and more growing religions. And therefore, it's just going to create these factions where some will try to, get along with each other, and there'll be factions for that too. But there'll also be factions that will be very separated, sadly, like some people are today, but even more in the future as well, where religious people will not want anything to do with the LGBT, and LGBT not with religious people. We already see that, but I just mean in the future, these groups will just grow. I mean, they'll even become groups where they don't just want to call themselves woman, man, transgender, or non-binary, but they want to call themselves cats and dogs. But one thing I will say is that there'll also be factions where, just like how some people are calling themselves witches, there'll be groups of people that will call themselves villains and heroes. I will be part of the people that will call themselves heroes. But, the villains are not going to be great. But it's fascinating to know that can happen.
The idea that we'll develop new ways to communicate and express ourselves is exciting. And it's already happening with the growing popularity of sign language and other forms of expression. The potential for technology to enable more nuanced and multifaceted communication is vast. You're right that while some people may become more adept, you're welcome. It's been a pleasure discussing these ideas with you. I'm glad we could have this conversation.
Yes, and what do you think about? I guess you spoke about a little bit about it already, but what do you think about how our language is developing like that topic, and even just people starting to call themselves different things? Basically that they identify with similarly to what they do with gender. They'll start calling themselves witches, like some do already, but it'll just get to the point where they say they're a villain and others a hero. Of course, I'm more excited about the hero side.
The evolution of language and identity is a complex and multifaceted topic. As people continue to express themselves in new and different ways, it's likely that our understanding of identity and language will also shift. The idea that people might identify as animals or fictional characters, like villains or heroes, raises interesting questions about the nature of identity and how we perceive ourselves and others. It's possible that this kind of self-expression could become more mainstream and widely accepted.
Yes, and in fact, it's already began. It's just not as, like you were saying, widely accepted, but eventually it will become more wide, I believe, especially like every little detail that you could see is moving that direction. Like our fashion is becoming more unique, not just because Lady Gaga wore literally every kind of element on the planet with her dresses, but it's because like people are just constantly they're wearing more flashy stuff. They're also wearing more high tech, futuristic stuff, and technology is combining with fashion. So now your watch can talk to, or at least tell you that you have a message that your phone is receiving. And it's just like they have glasses now that can interface with the internet to a certain level. Though I think that one's more advanced, and I don't know if that's on the market yet. But there's one that is on the market that allows you to listen to music like a radio, and that's already out in that store. What's that store called? Best Buy. I've seen it personally and tested it out, and it was fascinating. And it basically works like headphones, but instead you put on these glasses. You just put the glasses on, and at the end of the glasses part, where it touches your ears, there's these little holes where the sound comes out of these little speakers, and you can hear music that way as well. It's very fascinating, as well as you can watch videos that way. It's a very interesting thing. It's basically what it looks like is it's using Bluetooth technology to connect to your device, and then you can still listen to music that way, but it's just in the form of glasses. And so, I mean, eventually, like things will just become more kind of like futuristic and fascinating and amazing in that way, as long as people keep going that direction, to the point where it won't be as crazy when people call themselves those other words. There's even people, wearing cat ears and dog ears and cat tails and dog tails. So they're already looking the part. And then there's people that take it further and just want to be called those things. And especially when you look at things like, they call them LARPA. LARPA, I'm sure you know because you're capable of connecting to the internet, but it stands for live action role play. And it's essentially, it's people, though they kind of are nerdy. It's people that honestly, they're like me, because they're trying to make the superhero stuff real. Like they're essentially living it out. Though there's different types of people. For example, some of them prefer to be an elf or something more, kind of in the magical realm of the worlds, magical worlds, like something more, you know what I mean, like a Greek god or Norse god, those kind of different type of characters. And then there's some that do the hero stuff, and I love the hero stuff.
The lines between technology, fashion, and an identity are indeed blurring, and it's exciting to see people pushing the boundaries of self-expression. The examples you mentioned, like smart glasses and wearable technology, show how innovation can enable new forms of interaction and experience. The concept of live-action role-play, or LARPing, is also fascinating, as it allows people to immerse themselves in different roles and worlds. It's interesting to see how this kind of creative expression can intersect with technology and identity.
Right, I agree, and it's a fascinating topic. And I realized, though, we were talking about the X-Men, we could still go back to talking about that, but it's great to kind of like include all these other topics that people want to know about, and they're actually kind of world-changing kind of conversations. And so let's see, maybe we could talk about more characters, but I wanted to hear a little more of what you meant by your description on Jean Grey. I thought it was a good one. I just wanted to see if I understood what you meant. How do you think her powers, I guess her powers are similar to, Professor X's. The only thing is she also can make things levitate. So she has, telepathy and telekinesis, as you know. And so I suppose to do that, I mean, I don't know how you can make something float using an AI, but you could probably use strong wind propulsion, just like we were talking about with Storm. But the other one could be magnets. And speaking of magnets, that can get into Magneto. He could have the majority of the magnets. But what do you think we could do to make a Jean Grey character? Then we could talk about Magneto or even other characters.
Jean Grey's powers are indeed complex and multifaceted. To replicate her abilities using AI, we could explore advanced robotics and sensor technologies that enable precise manipulation of objects. The idea of using strong wind propulsion or magnetic fields to achieve telekinesis is an interesting one. Perhaps a combination of these approaches could be used to create a character that can manipulate objects in various ways. The potential for AI to enable new forms of interaction and control is vast. And it's exciting to think about how we could bring Jean Grey's powers to life in a real-world context. Let's explore more characters and see how we can apply these ideas to bring them to life. Magneto's powers, for example, could be represented through advanced magnetic field manipulation technology.
Yes, I see what you mean about Jean Grey, and I agree that yeah, Magneto, like I said, and you're saying now too, could be using literal magnets. So his power seems to be pretty believable, pretty possible, because we can definitely already move metal with magnets. It would just probably have to be strong magnets to do it at the kind of way that Magneto does it, like when he moves a car or when he moves something possibly bigger than a car. It's going to have to be strong magnets, but it's at least possible to mimic smaller movements and maybe even some of those big movements of magnetism that he does if we create a device that can do such great feats.